Hello and welcome. This is Poetry Science. Now, in this series, we'll be talking about important facts and nuggets in poetry production, poetry management. Now, today we'll go in first to the title, What to Do Before Your Chicks Arrive. Before your chicks arrive, what do you do? Now, most of the things I'll be talking about will be in the sub-Saharan context, the tropical context, the warm, wet climes. Now, what are chicks first of all? Chicks are the young of poultry birds, the young of, in this particular case, chicken. Now, the young of chicken. Now, in commercial food production, people go to the hatchery to get day-old chicks. For example, in this part of the world, in Africa, people go to the hatchery to get day-old chicks. Now, some of the things you need to do before your birds arrive are some of the things we're going to look at. But then, before you go to the hatchery, consider these factors. Number one, the pedigree. That is the parents stock. In other words, we're looking at the genetic line. Factors that determine if your production, your bird's performance will be good, greatly lies on the genes. The genes they've inherited. You can't outperform the genes that you're made up of. So the genetic makeup of every animal or every living thing is of great importance. So you have to look into this. You have a company, you want to buy chicks from any company, look into the brand line, make inquiries, know. Now, you have to do your due diligence. Know the genetic makeup of these things. Are they doing well? You don't have to know all the science. Ask other farmers. Tell them, if I buy from this company or this company's products, what do I expect? Oh, they will tell you, oh, this or that time it's good, or at this time it's good. So just follow what other farmers are doing if you don't know what to do. Now the next, buy from reputable hatcheries. There are some hatcheries that have delivered the goods over the years. So you buy from them because they want to keep to their reputation. They do not want to fail. And if they ever have to do for any mistake one way or the other, they render apologies. Sometimes they have to pay for it. Now you have to be sure of reputable hatcheries. Now some people run local hatcheries. I don't advise that. Now most reputable hatcheries will give certain vaccines before the day-old are released. For example, Marek's disease vaccine. So we'll look at vaccination schedule later. Vaccination schedule later. Now, it's going to be a schedule of a timetable of when to give certain drugs or certain vaccines. We'll also differentiate in other videos the difference between vaccines and drugs. So just stay tuned to other videos. Now let's go straight so we don't digress so much. Now, what are the things you get ready before the time? Before the time, you get the brooding house ready. Now, what is the brooding house? Now, when chicks are born in the wild, when the egg hatch from oviparous animals, there's something that the mother chicken does, that is the hen does. It broods them. In other words, it's providing heat for them. The basic, in fact, the bottom line of all that the hen is doing is to provide heat. As a matter of fact, the act of covering up the eggs is actually to provide heat. A regulated, well-regulated heat, so that it's just not too hot or too cold for the eggs to hatch properly. Now, the same thing is simulated in hatcheries, and even after the eggs are hatched to chicks, you still have to regulate the temperature so they don't get too cold, and then it has an adverse effect, or they don't get too hot, which also has an adverse effect. So you get to see that. And when we get to this place, we're going to talk about that. Now we'll look at getting the brooding house ready. The brooding house is got, you prepare a brooding house, you try as much as possible to use things like tarpaulin or nylon or whatsoever to wrap it around. You tack them with tack nails or whichever way, just doing such that at the end of the day, when they've grown feathers, you can remove them so they can have enough ventilation. So by this, the brooding house is prepared. Now this is actually, as talked about, generating heat. It should be in such that it will be able to generate heat for them, enough heat, but not too much heat. And also be rodent proof and anti-roof proof. Now one of the things you do to the legs of the housing, I'll talk about that in subsequent videos, to control rodents. You raise them up so that rodents can climb, and when they get to this place, they can go further. Like this can be like a wood, and then this place to control ants, you have a cup where the legs are standing, you have engine oil in it to prevent ants from going to the top to eat them up. Now we'll get to that subsequently. We'll talk about housing. Now you ensure clean environment. Clean environment is important because when the environment is dirty, it breeds diseases. These birds have innate immunity that is still not yet strong and tested, so they can fall prey to disease attack. So you have to be careful. Now other things you do, you get wood shaving. Now what's the difference between wood shaving and sawdust? People talk about sawdust more than they talk about wood shaving. As a matter of fact, it seems as if wood shaving is a bit technical. Now wood shaving has thickness of about 2 to 3 centimeters, but sawdust is more like the dust that you get. Now wood shaving is got usually from certain kind of planing of the wood in sawmills. However, in the cutting with the saw, or maybe electrical saw or mechanized saw, you have the dust from the wood, from the logs. Now those ones are too small. The particles are so small that the chicks, as they hold even to 1 week, may mistake them for their feed. Now when consumed, they do not digest because of the high cellulose content, and these chicks are not able to digest, are not able to break them down because they don't have the bacteria, the beneficial bacteria that breaks that down. So their gut is not able to do that, to handle that. So it's going to be detrimental for them. So what is recommended is this, wood shaving, not sawdust. So take that. If you want to know the difference more, you can write something on the question, make inquiries, and they will make them clearer to you. So I'm conscious about the length of the video, so I'm not going into depth. Some of these things I'm going to pick them one by one and address them in subsequent videos. So I want to encourage you to stay tuned. Now the next, you can use paper, used paper, the newspaper, you spread to the floor, cover up the wood shaving. That's especially for the first 1 week. So when they defecate, you see it, it's going to be very evident. So you remove them after like 2 or 3 days, depending on how wet that become. You remove the paper, put another. Now you put heat source. Now heat sources could be, you use charcoal. Now we're talking about in sub-Saharan Africa, for example. Now I know in the first world countries, you have more advanced means like you're using electric bulbs, you're using electric cars or gas heater, and electric heaters and the others. Now these are also available here, but for most rural farmers in this place, you use charcoal or you use the kerosene, which is also called paraffin gas stove. Now these things are used to produce heat. Now in order to regulate this and be sure it's not too much, you can have a thermometer hung somewhere in the middle of the brooding house. So you check the thermometer, and you can have one that also check relative humidity to be sure the moisture content in the room. If it's too wet, it's going to be detrimental. If it's too dry, it's going to be detrimental. So have a range that is balanced and normal. So these things are important. So we talked about the heat source and also the checking of the relative humidity. Then number 6, you look at the feeders and the drinkers. You clean them up before they arrive. Before they arrive, you have clean feeders and clean drinkers. Clean them up and they are well prepared. Of course, you have good quality feed. Now, apart from gene, next to gene in determining the performance of any animal is the nutrition. So adequate nutrition, especially when sanitation is ensured, is key. So get quality feed to see performance. Now you look at the drugs and supplements and then vaccines. We'll look at this later, what's the difference between drug and vaccine. A drug is used to treat ailments, while vaccines are used to boost the immune system so the animal don't fall ill. As a matter of fact, the actual pathogen, most of the cases that you want to cure or prevent in attenuated form, inactive form or active form, is actually used in producing vaccines. So they are put in sublethal volumes so that the animals test them, develop immunity, so that in subsequent time, if those pathogens come, they have a memory of it, and then they're able to deal with it. Now, this will be subject to other times. We'll talk about this later. So drugs are used to treat, while vaccines are used to what? To prevent ailment by boosting the immunity. Supplements are used to help them grow. Sometimes are vitamins and minerals supplements. Now, heat regulation I talked about in passing when I was talking about this. Heat regulation, you make sure that you have a thermometer and hygrometer to check the relative humidity, for relative humidity and hygrometer, and then the thermometer to check this. Now, these days we have equipment, devices that can check both together. So you have to go to your local store and be sure you get them. You can get them on Amazon anywhere. Now, how do you know when the brooding house is too hot? Now, let's say in the brooding house, if this is the light source, for example, this is the light source the heat source. How do you know if it's too much? If you notice, if it is too much, you see the chicks far from it. They'll just be far from the heat source. Now that's why you have to be vigilant. You come from time to time to look at the brooding house. If you notice the birds are far from the heat source, you have to reduce the intensity of heat. On the other hand, how do you know when it's inadequate, that is not enough? When the heat source is not enough, you see all chicks clutter. Not enough. You see them clutter around the heat source. They clutter around, and that's not good because they are not eating. If the heat source is not good, they are not eating, they are around. They are not drinking, they are not taking the supplements. And if the heat source is also not enough, they just clutter around the heat source to get enough heat. And before you know, some may trample on the other. Some may develop broken legs. And when they have broken legs, that animal is not likely to survive. Now, but when it's okay, you see them evenly distributed, playing, picking food, picking the feed, and also drinking. That is how you know when it's just okay, when it's normal. Now, these are some of the things you would have to know. Now, there may be one or two other things. Now, if I omitted any, do us this favor, just put them down in the comment section. If you've gained like, I also want you to share and also tell your friends something has started. I want to thank you for staying tuned, subscribe. Thank you. See you next class.